Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this evening. This is part of a new series we're running around induction sessions for new club volunteers. So there's not too many of us on the call this evening. So by all means, as we're going through, feel free to drop a message or a question if you've got one in the chat function, or raise your hand, or as we're quite low on numbers, feel free to kind of unmute and jump in if you do have a question that you want to raise as we're going through. So my name's Alistair Kay. I'll be delivering the induction this evening. I am the Football Services Manager at Berks Bucks. So I head up our Football Services department, and we have responsibility for the governance of the game. So that encompasses everything from managing the annual registration process for clubs, leagues, referees and volunteers and players, to making sure that the game is played in a safe and fair manner throughout the course of the season. So discipline falls under myself, and then safeguarding. I'm joined on the call this evening by Liz Verrill, who is our Chief Exec and the Senior Safeguarding Lead for the County FA, and is also a former welfare officer herself. And Liz will be manning the chat for me this evening and making sure if anybody does put any questions in there, she'll shout them out or ask me to stop. And then we're also joined by Paul Hubbard, who is one of the more experienced and proactive CWIs in the county, who will be offering the benefit of his experience this evening as well. Paul is welfare officer at Mortonville Juniors, who are based near Aylesbury and have over 30 teams across all age groups. So busy man in the role. As I said, if you do have a question as we go through, then by all means, please feel free to ask it, and hopefully between the three of us, we'll be able to give you an answer. So as I said, the goal of this session really is to just provide an introduction to welfare officers, or for welfare officers, to the County FA and to the role, conscious that it's a big responsibility to step up and take on a role such as this, particularly something which has such a high level of responsibility for child welfare. So over the course of the next 45 to 60 minutes or so, broken it down, I want to look at the role of the welfare officer, and that I've broken down into 4 areas: relationship with players, which I think is key, and kind of making sure you've got that trust of the young players within your club. The role within the club structure itself, particularly around the management committee and the relationship there. I'm going to touch on DBS verifications, responsibilities there, and what that process looks like. And then the relationship with the County FA and what you can expect from us, and then what we ask from yourselves in return. I'm then going to jump onto the whole game system quickly, which, if you're not aware, is the software that the FA uses for managing the grassroots game, and try and show you some tips around helpful information that's at your fingertips if you log on there. And then ends on a Q&A, but as I said, if you do have any questions throughout the course of the session, then please feel free to let us know. So in a nutshell, what is the role of the club welfare officer? So the CWO is responsible for ensuring that the club operates in a safe and enjoyable playing environment, and that all coaches and helpers have undergone the required FA background checks. It is also then the primary point of contact for any member within the club who may have concerns regarding the safeguarding of children or adults at risk within the club. So as I said, it is a wide and varied role, and it is one that does carry with it quite a lot of responsibility and quite a lot of weight. Obviously, child safeguarding and safeguarding of adults at risk is very much at the forefront of the FA's mindset and strategy. So it is something that we place a large amount of emphasis on, and we hope that that emphasis is then placed, is then given to it within the club as well. So looking at the role of the CWO within the club then, and particularly that relationship with players. For us, it's important that the welfare officer builds up a relationship with their players and is seen as someone that can be contacted pretty much at any time by any individual within the club if they have a concern. So that may be a player coming to you themselves. It could be a coach having a concern about a player, a parent wanting to confide or share some important information with you. So it's important that you have that level of approach and responsibility that comes with the role, that people feel they do have that trust in you and that they can confide in you. For yourself, we would ask that CWOs are proactive in monitoring players for any changes in behaviour which could then potentially raise the flag, that there's been some kind of change in that player's personal circumstances or well-being. And in order to do that, ultimately, you need to make sure that you are visible and known within the club. To say we want the CWO really to be that point person that anybody within the club structure feels they can go to and raise that concern, and that they know that that concern will be dealt with appropriately and with the level of gravitas and sincerity that it needs. Now, the way you tackle that may well depend on the size of the club. So a single club welfare officer at a club with 5 to 10 teams, let's say, may well be in a position where they can regularly attend training or matches and build up a personal relationship with players and parents themselves. In larger clubs, and the larger community clubs we have across the county that may have upwards, like with ball of over 30 teams or so, there may be different tactics that you look to try and encompass to actually still fulfill that role, and you may look to actually recruit additional assistant welfare officers to help you with that across different age groups. So whilst in larger clubs it may well be harder, it is still important to have that presence, though, just to make sure that people know they can come to you if they need to. And there's various assets that we have within the County FA that can help you with that, in terms of notices that can be put up around clubhouses and best practice around how you can try and make yourself known amongst the members that you may not actually interact with on a daily basis. By having that personal relationship with players, you also end up playing an important part in making sure what we call the youth voice is represented across the club. Again, this is something that's become an important focus for the FA and the county recently, as we look to make sure that the views of and feelings of players themselves are represented in the decision making. Adults will often think that they know what is best for the children and will know what they want. However, we found from our own experience, when we've had that kind of opportunity to meet with young players in particular and have these conversations with them, sometimes what clubs are doing with the best intentions and what they believe is in the best interest of the players may be different from what the players themselves are actually looking for. And particularly when we've spoken to younger players, it's clear that enjoyment and comfort really is the most important thing to them. So clubs that are able to then prioritise opportunities for those players to play with friends and have fun in a safe environment really see some benefits from that. As the club welfare officer, if you're the one that is spending a lot of time with the players themselves, you are have that position of trust and confidence from the players that they can come and talk to you about anything. Gives you that opportunity to then represent those views on the club management structure. And then finally, as the internal safeguarding lead, there's a responsibility to set a positive example in and around the club in your own actions. And part of this, unfortunately, then will probably play into checking and challenging the behaviours the behaviour of others. And what I've said here is particularly around parents and spectators. If you think of those competitive parents on the sidelines, there's a degree of responsibility that comes with the position of the club welfare officer, that actually you may be able to step in and remind the parents, should we say, of the ethos of the club, and try and get them to focus on the positive, creating a positive environment around the FA's Respect campaign if we only do positive. And particularly in the younger age groups, highlight that that focus should be on fun, not necessarily win at all costs in under-7s football. Within the wider club structure itself, as the club welfare officer, you are one of the most important roles in grassroots football. And as I mentioned previously, having that close relationship with young players means you've got the opportunity to represent the youth voice within the club. So therefore, we would see that one of the prime roles within a club for the welfare officer is to set that long-term safeguarding structure and ensure that safeguarding is kept as a key priority for the club management committee. Now, I think I said on the email that went out around this induction session, this even in no way replaces the training that should have been done or you will have lined up around Safeguarding Children workshop and the welfare officer workshop. And those sessions will go into much more detail around things like creating a club action plan as part of your safeguarding training. So it's important to refer back to that on a regular basis and try and look to see where you can implement some of the ideas that come out from that training within your own structure. and make sure that actually you have an effective safeguarding structure set up within the club to mitigate any risks and to make sure that you are providing that safe environment for children. Now, in order to support this, the welfare officer should, and we would probably say must, be on the club management committee and be an active part of any serious club discussions. If you are part of a club and you're not currently on that management committee, we strongly urge you to have a serious conversation with your club chair about getting you appointed to sit on that committee as an active member at every meeting. If you've got any concerns around that, or you may be facing some resistance around that, then please let us know, because we will back you up in any conversations you have around that. For us, it's essential that safeguarding is a regular agenda item on any club management meeting, and that it is not seen as an inconvenience, but it should be at the heart and soul of pretty much everything the club does. The FA's obviously done some stuff around this, with making it a requirement for all club management committee members, or the senior club management committee members, sorry, to have completed the online safeguarding for committee members course. And while that course is designed really to get senior club officers to reflect around the impact of their decision making on young players, that needs to be backed up by having that constant representation of the youth voice on the management on a regular weekly or monthly basis. And part of that, again, as a senior club officer, may mean having to check and challenge poor behaviour within the club management committee and within your peers. Part of that will then also possibly include supporting the club through investigating internal complaints. Now, this is something which we find particularly in the bigger clubs, just by sheer nature of economies of scale, and you've got more players, more coaches, more parents involved. A lot of club welfare officers may well have to get involved in at some stage, and it can be anything from a minor complaint around a parent not feeling that their child is having equitable playing time, right up to potentially more serious accusations around bullying. We're always here at the County FA to offer support around those, but generally it's something that the club would be expected to investigate and make a primary decision on in the first instance, around whether any action is required, whether it's censure against the coach or all the way up to potentially expelling an individual from the club. We're happy to help you with that process, and we've got various complaints procedures and training sessions available for clubs. So if you ever do find yourself in that situation, then please feel free to come to us and we'll talk you through it and do everything we can to support. Liz, I'm going to pause there just before I move on to DBS verifications. Is there anything that's come out in the chat?
No, there's no questions to date yet, Al. I think one thing that I've really noticed, I suppose, in my role as CEO, is the amount of complaints that come through, and the amount of times when it is a peer, it is a coach that maybe is, hesitate to use rogue, but a coach that goes out and is, I suppose, delivering to their own ethos, delivering to their own agenda. And actually that can cause quite a few problems. So I think, just to reiterate what you're saying around the club management committee is really important. You have to have that influence to be able to set the ethos within that club, to make sure that you're not dealing with things that, you know, are within your control to change. But at the moment, Al, no questions that I can see.
Okay, perfect. Paul, from your own experience in terms of the role within the club and kind of interacting with your club colleagues or parents and players on a regular basis, is there anything else you just wanted to perhaps highlight that I may have missed around that role of the welfare officer within the club?
No, not really. I just, from my own personal point of view, this is the end of my third year. The first year was difficult, but the anonymity helped, because nobody knew who you were, so you could wander around and just be unseen. You were just watching football, but you would hear and see everything, which is quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to kind of keep your eyes and ears open in this kind of role, and just, like you say, kind of pick up stuff almost that's going on in the background, and really give you that understanding of what's happening within the club, and kind of what those relationships are between players and parents and coaches and so forth.
Yeah, I like to think that at our club we've got parent reps, we have parent rep meetings, everyone's got WhatsApp groups, there are all sorts of things. But the contact in the message is constantly being sent out. And at parent rep meetings, one of the more senior members of the committee, they class me as that. I'm included in everything. We sit down and we discuss what we do, you know, and the role of the committee in total. So we've got quite good links with our families and kids, I believe.
No, that sounds perfect. Brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to move on and touch on DBS verifications next. So this is obviously one of the most common roles that you'll likely have to fulfill as a club welfare officer, and that is to make sure that DBS applications and qualifications are being effectively managed within the club. Ultimately, as CWO, you're responsible for ensuring the compliance of the coaches within the club and ensuring that all people working with children or with adults at risk have the correct qualifications that they need. I'll go into, when we go into the whole game system later, I'll show you how you can kind of monitor this throughout the season, but I just wanted to reinforce it's a message that you've probably heard before and seen in various updates and on the website, but just to reinforce that every individual coaching under 18s must have a valid DBS issued within the last 3 years. And if that drops off, if that expires and an application has not been resubmitted, or there is a coach leaves the team and there's nobody with the DBS managing them, then any non-compliance around that could potentially see that team's affiliation suspended until it's resolved, which obviously means children then not having the opportunity to play football. So it's an important role and important function that you'll be looking to manage and stay on top of on a week or monthly basis. Just to highlight what that verification process looks like, we've recently been able to integrate a whole game system with GB Group, who are the FA's disclosure partner and do all the background checks for us. What this means is that you're able to initiate the process through the whole game system and track it every step of the way as you go through that. In order to do that, the club as a whole will have a PIN from GB Group, which basically gets entered into whole game and links the two accounts. Through this, you would assign an individual to the role of a club DBS applicant, and it sends a prompt to that individual and it allows them to initiate their DBS check through the whole game system, which means that when it comes back, and it hopefully comes back clear, that DBS will automatically be updated straight onto their fan without any delays, without any confusion about it being put onto a fan with a potentially different spelling or an out-of-date address. And you know that you're able to stay on top of those verifications and see exactly who has what qualifications for coaches looking after young players within the club. We do have a guide that kind of goes through this flowchart in a bit more detail. And I'm happy to kind of go into that in more detail at a later time, but just wanted to flag it whilst it's on the screen there. Final aspect I wanted to go through before kind of showing you a bit of the practical stuff on the whole game system is just around the relationship with the county FA. Now, we do take pride that we do have a strong relationship with welfare officers within the county. We try and do a lot of engagement and a lot of CPD across the course of the season. We are always, hopefully at the end of the phone, or very responsive on emails, because we understand the pressures that you will be under within the role and the importance of trying to come back and give you advice, the correct advice, in a prompt manner. So what we look for from a CWO really will be regular dialogue. We want to know what's going on within your club, and we want to be able to help you out with those issues. So please, as I said before, and I keep reiterating, please feel free to come to us and contact us about any questions or concerns you may have, because it's one of those things where you don't want to take chances. You want to make sure that you're acting in the right manner when it comes to welfare of young players. Part of that, understandably, is that any safeguarding breaches need to be reported through to the county FA immediately. And we're talking here particularly around those serious breaches. So anything that suggests that there's been criminal activity, harm to a child, or threat of harm to a child needs to come through to us at the county FA immediately, so that we can then flag that up both with the local safeguarding community within the county and the designated officers and so forth, but then also flag it up with the FA. And if there is something that actually needs us to take action, we're able to do so on a prompt manner. Any breaches by, let's say, a coach, a suspension has to be issued by the national FA, so we will work with them to make sure that they have the information they need. We're unable at county level to impose that immediately, so you need to come. That's why it is important to come to us as soon as you have those concerns. What I would say though is that in the first instance, when it comes to poor practice, we would normally look for that to be dealt with by the club in that first instance, and those are those lower level or more minor complaints that I would have spoken about earlier, whether that is around issues around playing time or aggressive parents and so forth. We would look for the club to try to resolve those first. But again, as I said, we are happy to report those as needed. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do try and run regular CPD sessions throughout the season, and we are looking to host certainly monthly online welfare officer catch-ups throughout the course of the next season. We've been doing them over the summer and they've gone down really well, so we will look to continue those as much as we can. And in those, whilst we will certainly be sharing our experience and providing updates from the FA, part of that is also to allow you as welfare officers to share your experience, not only with us, but also with each other. It allows us to understand what is happening on the ground in grassroots football. And if we discuss poor practice in those sessions, it gives us an understanding of any trends that may be coming up around, perhaps it is around over-competitive coaches and parenting in a specific league that we're able to then address. And it's only by having those group conversations that some of that may actually come to light. And again, as going back to one of my very first comments, it also gives yourselves as welfare officers that opportunity to represent the youth voice within your club to the county FA and feedback on any comments, concerns, questions, suggestions, recommendations that you may be getting from young players. It allows you to represent them to us, where we can hopefully try and put some of them in place. So in exchange, where we will lean on welfare officers to support us, will come around support with compliance of coaches, assisting us if a complaint gets escalated to the county, or if we have to undertake any disciplinary investigations into major misconduct incidents that may have happened at a youth game. In those situations, we will contact normally yourself as the welfare officer, but we may also contact the club secretary. So we would hope that a welfare officer and a secretary have a very close relationship within the club, and a lot of information needs to be shared across those two roles, so that when we come to the club after some of this information, we know that it will come back to us pretty promptly. The other thing we're looking to introduce this season is a welfare officer buddy system. This is something that has come out of those monthly sessions we've been holding online over the last couple of months. We've got some really great experienced welfare officers who are happy to mentor or support new volunteers in the role. So you can benefit from their experience or practical experience on the ground and dealing with some of these incidents. So we will look to get that set up ahead of next season, play matchmaker and try and pair up experienced CWOs and new ones. So if you are interested in that, then please let myself or Liz know, either in the chat or by email at any stage, and we will try to match you up with someone. Liz, before I go on to the practical demonstration, is there anything that's come through on the chat, just on that section?
Yes. So just going back to the DBS, we've got one question here. I'm still waiting on a coach's DBS to appear on whole game system. Submitted in April, classed as completed on GBG, but still showing as no DBS on whole game. Would we be told by the county FA if the DBS was not clear?
So if the DBS was not clear, then the applicant would get a letter from the FA asking them to provide the copy of the certificate and provide some more information. From our end, we're not able to see if there is content or if it's a random sample that may just be coming for more checking. But if you let us know the name of the coach, we can definitely check to see what the status is at our end, whether it is showing as approved and it's just an IT issue that hasn't gone across onto the fan, or whether it has either gone into a new record or has been flagged for whatever reason and needs more action by the coach. So that one, I would say, let us know the name and yeah, the details of the coach, and we'll look into that one for you.
Great. That's the only question on the chat. I just wanted to come back on one thing, and that is how lonely the role can be. It's a role where you're 8 times out of 10 you're dealing with the not so nice stuff in the club, and I suppose going back to your point around the CPD and the opportunities to buddy and network, I know as a welfare officer myself, I found that really useful to be able to talk to other people that are in the same boat, that are probably getting some of the poor practice, and just needing a little bit of support and someone to lean on. So all I would say there is just make use of that that's there for you, because it's really important.
Yeah. Paul, was there anything you wanted to come in on just around either that relationship with the county or the DBS process?
I would. The DBS process is fine. It is what it is, and sometimes there are mistakes, but we can always sort them out just with a phone call or an email generally. The one thing I would say, you suggested earlier on about buddies, I would happily put myself forward for that, for someone reasonably local to me. And the fact that Liz said that sometimes it's lonely. Lonely's a bit harsh, but you wander around with information, then you've got to try and investigate cases. But I've always found that the county have been 100% supportive in everything I've done. And even if it's just ringing up to say, I've got this problem, this is how I intend to deal with it, and they're happy and they support you. So the system works if we help each other.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Right, what I am going to do now is, if I can, I'm going to try and share the whole game system screen, just so I can do a bit of a practical demonstration around some of the key information that is available on your fingertips there. So hopefully the whole game is now up and you're able to see the main dashboard. So the page that's showing now will be the main landing dashboard that it will come up to, and this is sort of your personal account dashboard. So I wouldn't worry about the stuff down the side, that relates to your own personal account. However, as a welfare officer, you will receive updates around expiring DBSs, or if someone's been appointed to a role without a specific qualification. What that would do is it will come up just on this main landing page as a notification, and if I click on this one now, you'll show that I've been appointed to a role, but I don't currently have a DBS. So it's flagging already on your main landing page that there's something that may require a piece of action. So just wanted to flag that first. To then see more information around the club and to track all qualifications, click on the club tab across the top, and this will show all the different clubs you're associated with and the different roles. Now, as a welfare officer, you may have a slightly different looking dashboard, and some of these tabs may not be here. Different roles obviously have different privileges, so I can't guarantee it will look exactly the same, but it will look effectively like this. And the three that I wanted to flag and just kind of draw your attention to were safeguarding tab, club officials, and team officials. They all show the same kind of information, but prioritize different aspects of it. So if I come onto the safeguarding tab, first of all, this is where I mentioned earlier that if you wanted to integrate the club with your GB group account to initiate DBS applications, you can do so through here. And on the main club safeguarding dashboard, click on DBS applications and put your organizational PIN in here. And this will then allow you to start DBS applications through the whole game system. To do that, click on add a new official, search for them with their name or fan and date of birth, and it will automatically add them as a DBS candidate. That is effectively the only role that you will need to play in initiating DBS application beyond then verifying the documents. On the main part of this safeguarding tab, however, it will show you every individual that's appointed to a role within the club and show you what their qualifications are. So green obviously means everything's good. If it is grey or black, it just means that we don't have a record for that. And then you'll see various people have amber, which suggests that they are expiring in the near future. So you may want to look at how far out they are from expiring and just bear that in mind, so that you know when you need to either prompt them to undertake an education course, whether that's renewing something online or signing up to an in-person course, or prompt them that they need to submit their DBS renewal. You can export all of this information to PDF up in the top corner here, and you can use all of these filters across the top if you want to search by a specific category. So for example, you could search for DBS is expiring soon. This will come up, out of date, and it will show you anybody that doesn't have one. So again, really handy one, tab to take advantage of. I probably recommend going onto this on a regular basis, just so you're able to see who's in what role within the club and what qualifications may be expiring soon. That's particularly key if you are part of a club where perhaps the officials change on a regular basis and you're not always advised of them. Ideally, you should be, and you should be aware of who's in what role and updated when those do change. However, I'm also very conscious that that doesn't always happen in reality, so this gives you that opportunity to monitor it. Second tab I was going to touch on is the club officials one. This is for people who are appointed in club-wide roles, so rather than specific club, it's that parent organisation. You've got the key officials, who are the chair, the secretary, the treasurer, and the welfare officer. There must always be somebody named in those roles. So you'll see you can't click to end an individual in that role. Comes up with the error message that they cannot be deleted. To replace someone, you would have to click on the Add Official tab. Again, search for them based on the role or by their details and put them in the position, and it updates automatically. Liz, are you all right if I pop in your personal details and assign you to a role? Oh, I think she may have disappeared.
Fine by me.
Just so I can kind of show how quick and easy it is. This is where.
Don't put my date of birth in.
I've got to.
Oh, you did. I'm not that old.
So yeah, you just search for them. It comes up. Click on the box. Assign them to the role that they need to be put into. I'm going to put you as chair. Put today's date in, which is the 13th. Click OK, and that updates automatically immediately. For the other roles around here, this may be around player registration officers and so forth. Again, you add an individual to that role through exactly the same process of add official up at the top. But for these roles, if you want to remove someone from that, all you have to do is click on the edit button at the end here, enter today's date, and click OK, and it automatically removes them from the role immediately. It's a really handy tool to keep those records up to date. And there is an expectation and a responsibility that the club will update those records as any changes happen to them. I know because doesn't always happen, because I've been stung today sending out a message about next week's treasurer induction course, and I've had a couple of emails come back to say that they've been removed. They're no longer in that role. Obviously, we're working off the data that we have from the whole game system, so it's important to keep it up to date. Final tab I wanted to go on to was just around team officials. Now this will show you who is appointed to individual teams within the club. Again, there's a RAG rating, so they will have red if they're missing qualifications, amber if they've got qualifications which are expiring in the current season, and therefore you may want to make sure that they know when to book on a course. And then they will show green if they're absolutely fine. To end a role on this, you are able to just click on the cross at the side. I'm going to remove Chris actually from the role so I stay associated with it. And it should remove them immediately from that role. Every youth team must still have a coach and a manager appointed to them. As I said earlier, otherwise you could see that team's affiliation suspended for non-compliance until a qualified official is put in that role. The other thing I wanted to show you, though, which is really useful on this tab, is the qualification report. Everybody's going through the affiliation process at the moment, and they should be making sure that the team official data for the 2021 season is completely accurate at the point of affiliation. We do affiliation annually, effectively to give that check and challenge and to force clubs into making sure that the records are up to date and we're not working off expired contact details around who's responsible for what youth team. So what I'd recommend is, once your club's completed the affiliation process, is to go into this tab and download that qualification report. This will then pull up a list of who is in what role and what qualifications they do and do not have, so that you will be able to go through and almost create an action plan for the course of the season, so that you'll be able to see who you need to who needs to get qualified at what point. That is the last thing I was going to show in whole game, so I'm going to show you just what that team qualification report looks like. I just need to go through the sharing process again so that I can pull that up, and I just need to find where it is on my computer. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you are now able to see that, again, it's highlighted qualifications which are going to be expiring in the next 12 months, and it will flag people in red. The text will be in red if they don't have the qualifications they need for that specific role or for that specific team. In this instance, as you can see, I don't have a DBS. It's not required as part of my role here at the County FA, but I've appointed myself as an under-17 team coach, and I'm now showing up in red because I'm not qualified to actually hold that position. That should then be a flag to yourselves to say, we need to reappoint somebody to that role and get my DBS sorted. If I had previously had a DBS and it had expired, it would be highlighted in red in that box there. So again, like I said, really handy, useful tool where you have that information at your fingertips. It's just a case of knowing where in the whole game system that is available for you. Right. Appreciate that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the whole game system. There is a lot more functionality in there. Feel free to play around and have a look at what different information is at your fingertips. Try to avoid making any permanent changes. Most of the time, we should be able to get them back if you accidentally fold a team or remove a coach from the club that you shouldn't have done. We can get that information back. But like I said, there's a lot of information there, so feel free to play around and explore all the different information on the different tabs there. Before wrapping up, I just wanted to again highlight the support and resources we have here at the County FA to help you within the role. We've built up a wealth of online resources over the last 12 months on our website, which are available through the club management tab. To get there, across the top of the website, you go to the leagues and clubs and then club management. In that, there's a set of sort of one-page reference guides to a lot of the key FA regulations that clubs have to deal with on a daily basis. A lot of other kind of support materials around best practice. We've got a whole safeguarding section to the website with reference videos and links to resources that the FA have put together, which really take you through each of the various safeguarding requirements and give you in detail or depth of detail about what you need to do and what the club should have in place for each of those. So again, please have a play, have an explore of the website and see what is out there. If you do find there's you do have a question and you can't find the answer to it online, or you don't have the time to go through all of the many hundreds of FA pages around it, then please come to us. We do pride ourselves on our prompt customer support here, and we have internal targets around customer service. So we will look to make sure we respond to pretty much every question within 2 working days and try and resolve that issue in its entirety within 4. We're well over 90% success rate on hitting those. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to safeguarding, we appreciate the urgency a lot of the time around these queries. So if you do have a question around a concern that's been reported to you, or something that just doesn't feel right, or you need some support, we will prioritise those kinds of issues and come back to you as quickly as we possibly can. Beyond that, as I say, we do regular CPD sessions throughout the season, either in person or increasingly going forward, those will be held online. What we found over the last couple of months is that there is a a huge appetite for doing online sessions such as this, where it's a lot easier, and I think everyone's happier to give up an hour of their time to attend a meeting such as this versus potentially 3 or 4 hours out of their evening to come to the offices in Abingdon. But we will also look to hold, once things are back up and running normally, try and do various networking or in-person sessions across the county. So you've got the opportunity to meet us face to face. It's not all through a laptop screen like this. We then also have a section on our website called BBFA Support, which is online sessions much like this that we've been running for the last year, and we'll take a look at different aspects of running a grassroots football club and go into them in a lot more detail. So whether that is DBS compliance or managing internal complaints, there's a lot of resources out there. We're looking to get a calendar up for next season as well, where we will either be updating and rerunning some of those or introducing new sessions to help clubs through the minefield that is trying to run a grassroots football club. That pretty much concludes the presentation. I've got it down as a Q&A now, so I guess if there are any questions between Liz, Paul and myself, we're more than happy to try and answer them. If there aren't, however, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you found it useful. I hope it's given you a bit of a better understanding of the role, what it's going to entail going forwards, and kind of what that relationship with the County FA looks like. As I said before, we're always at the end of the phone or at the end of an email, always happy to help in any way we can. So please just reach out and we will do what we can to support you in the role.
Can I just add my thanks?
Yeah.
Just add my thanks to everyone that's come on the call tonight and for volunteering for the role. It's like I said, it's a really, really important role in safeguarding children and making sure people have a fun, safe environment to play with. So for us, it does kind of put you at the top in terms of what we need at each club. So just from me, a real thank you for volunteering to take on the role.
Yeah, I definitely echo that as well. It is an important one. So we wouldn't be able to provide a safe environment for young players if we didn't have people like yourself prepared to step up and support that. So thank you.